again, you're gonna have to be a dog. If you really want to get in this field, you want to make six figures, you got to be a dog. And I'm just telling you that if you're going to be on my team, I only bring the dogs. I bring the best of the best.
He brought the dog.
Yeah, so you gotta be a dog in this field.
Ain't no Pomeranians.
Yeah, you gotta be a dog, and that's in general. If you want to get into cybersecurity, you gotta be a dog because I've met people that get searched, get in, and they get fired.
Yeah.
Or be told to say it's better for you to leave or fire you. Right. I've seen that. Yeah, I've never been in that situation, thank the Lord. But, so you got to help people to help you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Tech Vote Podcast. My name is Osasu, an RMS specialist in the Govtech space, and we have a special treat today. We have your very own, an RMF specialist, a master's in cybersecurity, the voice of tech. He has his own business, Tech Vote, and he is also a RMF subject matter expert. Without further ado, Christopher Akpala.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that was actually. Doing? I'm doing good, bro. That was actually a good.
I
intro.
Surprised you, huh?
Yeah, you surprised me. You turn your radio voice. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, man. Hey, I don't really have that type of background, but when it comes to something like this, you always got to stay ready.
Nah, I love it, bro.
What I mean?
I love it.
So, how you doing, man? How you feel?
I'm feeling good, bro. This is new for me.
I'm sure.
You know me. You've been knowing me for how long? We know each other?
What we looking at, man? Like, I've known you since probably 2014. It's about 10 years.
Yeah, so we know that's
10-year anniversary. You gonna take me on the date?
No. I don't know. I get you a cup of something. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. All right, man. Just let you know, 10 years, man. We've been going strong for quite a long time, man. But yeah, man, I'm proud of you. I'm definitely grateful to be in your chair because you're normally here when you're interviewing people, man. So how does it feel to be the interviewee?
It's different. Knowing that you know me so long and you know my true story and you know what I've been through, so that's why I wanted you to do it because we best friends, bro. You know what I'm saying? Right. And I got a lot of love for you, and I know if I'm telling some crazy stuff, you're gonna tell me straight up. Hey, you know what I'm saying?
I will.
So
I will. With no hesitation.
Yeah, and I needed somebody like that, bro. So
absolutely, man, absolutely. Well, we're definitely gonna get to your story, man. And that's why we're here because we want people to know your story. So tell us about GovCon, man, GovTechCon, because I know you went to that recently, man.
Yeah. So GovTechCon was a very best event I ever been to in my life. Shout out to Simone Bees. Simone Bees did a great job.
Simone, we know about you.
Shout out to Simone because she killed that event. So that event, there's a lot of people in tech, especially in GovTech, that's making a lot of money. 6 figures, young people making 6 figures, and we just all was able to combine all together. So it was an amazing event, and I learned a lot, networked with a lot, and I pray that she keep GovTechCon keep going. So it was a fire event. Actually, you need to come next year.
Hey, I got you, man. I know you always invite me to these tech events. Sometimes I be like, I might come. Sometimes, I actually do come. So, man, keep inviting me, man. I'm loving to hear all the things that you're doing. I mean, here, man, you out here signing autographs, signing babies' foreheads, man. But now, man, you have garnered a lot of success for yourself. I know you personally, like you said, I've seen your journey. I've witnessed your journey. But we want to start at the very beginning.
I love it.
All right, your early life. You would say that you are a Washingtonian.
Yeah, I'm a Washingtonian. I don't know about. They keep saying the DMV. I'm from DC, and I've been telling you this for years.
You are from DC, right? You wave your flag. You loud and proud about it. You come into the office and say, I'm from DC, just to let you know.
I'll tell you.
That's the first thing that comes out of your mouth before any tech, before any business related stuff. You gotta let people know you from DC. But if I recall correctly, you wasn't born and raised in D.C. Can you really call yourself a Washingtonian? So tell us about your early beginnings.
So I grew up in Upper Marlboro.
Okay.
So I grew up in.
Were you born in Upper Marlboro?
Yeah, I was born in Silver Spring.
You was born in Silver Spring.
So I give you that.
You know we on Georgia. Hey, we ain't too far from Silver Spring, baby.
I know, and I know Aunt Lizzie would say I ain't from D.C. You talk to Eric Glizzy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, but that's awesome, man. So you was born in Silver Spring. Did you spend part of your childhood in Upper Marlboro before you moved to DC?
Yeah, so
and then when did you move to DC?
So I spent majority of my childhood in Upper Marlboro.
Okay.
My father's an engineer. He works in DC. He worked in DC at the time. He's a PE, by the way. And my mother was a social worker. So my father seen an opportunity in DC with the real estate, and also he owned a store on 8th Street.
Wow.
So he owned a general store or a dollar store on 8th Street. And my mother was, being a social worker, so he was like, "We're gonna move to DC." So I moved to DC around like 12 years old, and it was a crazy change, bro.
Right. So he was an engineer and he owned his own store.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, that must have been a lot for him.
Yeah.
And how many siblings did you grow up with?
So I have 4 brothers.
Okay.
So I got 4 brothers, so we always fighting. To this day, I don't got no sisters, so thank the Lord that I don't have to fight, especially in today's environment.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's definitely a lot different now. But wow, that's awesome. Your dad obviously, had a lot to deal with, as he was raising his 4 sons,
Yeah.
And also married to his wife at the time. That's great, man. So what was the change? Like moving from Maryland and then now coming to DC, it's like night and day.
Yeah.
So what was that like for you?
Yeah, so when I moved to DC, we were still in a decent environment. We still had a nice house, stuff like that. It was a bad change because like when you go into schools, like I'm from Upper Marlboro, I know math.
Sure.
I know all types of math. I know how to read. I know how to do all this stuff. So when I came to DC, I'm coming in the classrooms. People don't even know what's like 5 times 3 or 5 plus 5. They don't know. It was that DC education.
I understand. This is no slight to anybody from DC.
Yeah. So in a way, and there's no slight to nobody in DC. It's just what I experienced coming from
Absolutely.
Marlboro. So when I was in these classes, I kind of had to like low key dumb myself down just so I can kind of get with the vibe with everybody there. And at that time DC was crazy. Like
Right.
it was violent. You couldn't even ride the metro at the time. Like you trying to get on the metro, like you can't wear North Face, you can't wear Helis.
I remember.
Yeah, you can't even have an iPhone.
I
You
remember.
have an iPhone in public, that joint gone.
Hey, look, man, I remember I went to DC, doing what I was doing when I was an adolescent. I had a North Face Steep Tech. I had the North Face pants. I had some Nike boots. Got on the train, seen some dudes on the train. All we got to know is by the time I got home, I ain't had a North Face Steep Tech.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
man,
So
you
that's just how it was in the early 2000s in DC. But, I mean, that's absolutely awesome, man, because I know it's pretty rough, growing up in DC and then also going to school in DC at the time. So, but I do want to talk a little bit about, your upbringing and being in a house because I think you was somewhat culturally divided, right? Because your father is Nigerian, right? And your mother is from where? Arkansas, if I'm not mistaken?
She's from Arkansas.
Okay, so how was the cultural divide? Like, did that cause you to, because one side is Nigerian, the other side is basically American, did you feel as though that you had to choose a side? And also, how did that impact you, in your formative years?
Being Nigerian and being American, it's 2 different sides of it, especially in living in DC. Sometimes, during my early years, it wasn't proud to be a African.
I remember.
You know that.
Yeah, I remember.
So they'll talk about feed the homeless,
Booty scratcher.
Like, it's not like Wakanda now. Like, I'm proud to be with a Nigerian.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
right.
I'm proud to be you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It wasn't like that, bro.
Right.
So I didn't know whether I was ashamed in a way to not inherit my middle name, which is, Chiwuka Akpala.
Right.
So it's like, for me to adapt to people, I had to say, I wasn't related. I had to adapt what they wanted to do.
Right.
But at some point in my high school, I had to accept. I had to be proud of what I was because I don't have a slave name. In a way, I know my origins, I know my tribe, I know my culture. So at some point, I had to accept, and then we the standard.
Right.
Igbo. I'm Igbo, so we had to accept that and know that's the standard. And people that are Igbo are the standard, bro. They're one of the smartest people. They dominate the tech industry,
Right.
and various industries. So you had to. So at one point, I did have to accept it, and I loved it.
Right.
Are you passionate about tech, cybersecurity, social change? Join the Tech Woke movement on Patreon. Get exclusive access to discussions on emerging tech trends, cybersecurity insights, and valuable resources to help you get hired in tech, learn from others in the community, exchange ideas, and gain skills that will help set you apart whether you're a developer, enthusiast, or looking to break into the industry. This is your space. Support the movement, stay ahead of the curve, and be a part of the change. Join us today on Patreon.com/TechVote. I see you there.
Yeah, I mean, that's so interesting because you understand, like, I'm Nigerian born, Prince George's County raised. But being in a fully Nigerian household and then going to school during that time, it was a little rough because you wasn't fully embraced, even though we looked alike.
Yeah.
You know, so everything that you were conflicted with, I also was. But the only difference is, as you said, like, I knew where I came from. But as I was growing up and then starting to know my friends, it's like I understood what the issue was. They necessarily didn't know where they was coming from. But even with that, it's like you're able to join together, right? Because although I'm from Nigeria, I know my roots and everything, and you may not necessarily know your roots, and also like your history is scarred by slavery, we're still able to come together. And it's beautiful to see how Nigerians, West Africans, East Africans, for the most part, are able to come together, even with African Americans, man. And there's no longer this disconnect. So that's awesome, man. So speaking of high school, like, what was high school like? And even while you was high school, you know, what aspirations or dreams and aspirations did you have while you was in high school, and then also preparing to leave high school?
So when I was in high school, I always wanted to get in tech. I always wanted to do something like that. Or either at one point I did want to become a doctor, but when I got into school, I was like, yeah, I'm good. I don't want to be no doctor.
What school is this?
Bowie State.
Okay, and we'll talk about Bowie State.
Yeah, so I always wanted to either get in tech, become a lawyer, or get into biology. It was one of the three. So it's tech, whatever. I didn't think tech would be an option at the time. Even though my father is a smart dude, he's an engineer at PE, I just thought it was just him because he was like the smartest of the smart. So only he could do it. I didn't see too many black people in that space or doing things like that. So in high school, I did look to that, but over time, So to sum it up on that, I just didn't know what I wanted to do. But just because the environment I was in, because in the environment also there was a lot of street people,
right?
You know, people that was street, people that was good, and like it wasn't the standard. It's either you play football, basketball. Like I said, today we don't see a lot of that type of knowledge being had in high school.
So let me ask you. So with the streets, you know, violence going on in the streets, obviously, you know, during that time, like, you probably had people that were selling drugs, and then also sports being thrown in your face. Was that pulling you away from wanting to be a lawyer or wanting to get into tech or wanting to be a doctor? Like, at any time, was that starting to slowly pull you away?
That's actually a good question. Yeah, because I was thinking, like, okay, the only way you can make it from being in certain areas in DC is to become an NBA player or football player. So it was like, it's either that. So even I played a little football in high school. I wasn't the best,
right?
But then even that was the dream. I was gonna walk. That's the dream that kind of got me through college. I know we're gonna get to that further.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I mean, and I understand because I played football in high school, and you feel as though that's all you can do. You know, like, even teachers, like, they're asking you, "Oh, Sasso, how was the game?" And it's like, it was great, but I'm not really doing good in accounting right now.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And they don't really put emphasis or for black people to improve academically. Obviously, teachers want you to pass, but getting a C is that's the minimum standard, right? Like, we want to make sure that we're aiming to get A's, and we actually know outside of sports, outside of going into the streets, what we want to do for a career. So I'm glad that you was able to share that, man. So let's talk about, you know, after high school, like, where did you end up going after high school? What was after high school like? Because it's kind of like a kid, right? Like a kid sending off their 5-year-old for school. Like, he doesn't know what to do. He's scared. He's been home all the time. His mom been taking care of him. Dad been taking care of him. Now he has to go to school at 8, 9 in the morning, and it's an entirely new thing for him. So that's kind of how it is when you leave high school. So how was that like? Were you kind of just nervous? You was unsure what you wanted to do? Like, what was the next step after high school?
So, like, when I was in high school, I'm not going to lie, I didn't have the highest GPA. I had like a 1.7, 1.9, to be very honest with you. I didn't do no work. I just chose not to do any work because I was like, what is this stuff really going to get me?
Nah, I understand.
And I was like, oh, yeah, I could just do sports anyway. I could do some type of sports and get paid on it. So I was like, I literally go to class and go to sleep. You know what I'm saying? At one point in high school.
Right.
So when I was in high school, like, again, tech was thrown at me. There was a program they was trying to get me in. It was some program where you learn how to build computers and stuff like that. It was like you get a certificate. They actually pay you throughout.
What was the name of this program?
I forgot the name, but it was a good program. But I went to go do it was like towards my senior year. I went to go do the interview process, went downtown, ride the metro, did it, and they denied me, for that program. And it really hurt because I didn't have the highest GPA. This is probably my only thing that's going to get me out of school.
Right.
And I was like, I got denied. The guidance counselor was like, hey, how you get denied? He was confused. And he was like, I can help you out get into it. But I was so depressed. I just told him no. When I first got into tech, I was green. I was lost in the details, unsure of it all. Then one day I had my woke moment and everything clicked. The pieces came together and things just got better. The moment of clarity inspired me to create Tech Woke clothing. For those that have had the same awakening, this is for the tech community that's woke to what's next. Step into the future with cutting-edge designs, smart fabrics, and fashion that evolves with you, bold and intelligent, sustainable, and get your merch. Join the Tech Woke movement. Wear the future. Shop now at shoptechwoke.com. Thank you.
Right. So was you getting denied, like, do you feel as though those dreams were kind of just sidelined at that point?
Yeah, I feel like it was sidelined at the time. I just thought tech at the time wasn't for me.
It wasn't for you.
Yeah, but then I was like, okay, well, I can still probably see if I can try to play sports. Mm-hmm. So I was looking up, like, because I didn't really want to go to school, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So I was like, how can I get in sports? I was like, I can go to community college and then just see if I can try to walk on at a college. Okay. So I went to a community college called PG Community College.
Okay.
And that's where I met some people, And so I stayed there for 2 years, and even in the first couple of years there, school, I was in the remedial classes. Mm-hmm. You test, you gotta take the remedial math, remedial reading. Sure. So I had to take that for the first couple years, for the first year, and then I started getting into, and that's why I try to figure out what I want to do. I wanted to be a criminal justice major because I think at the time there was some events going on. I think it was there was some event, Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter, okay.
Yeah, and I really wanted to be a lawyer at the time.
Okay.
At that time. But, yeah, so I went to PG Community College, and I was pursuing a criminal justice degree, and I wanted to be a lawyer. So I stayed my time there, and I stayed there for like 2 years.
At PG?
Yeah, PG.
Okay.
And then I went to Bowie State, and then I wanted to change my major to biology. So I did one class in biology, and I was like, this ain't for me.
Right.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie.
Okay.
It ain't for me. And then that's where we met, at Bowie State.
Right. So when we met, you were still a biology major. When did you make the transition to criminal justice?
I was still a criminal justice major. I was going to change my major after I took biology just to see.
Okay,
okay. But after that, I was like,
it was kind of like a trial run.
Nah, I'm good, bro. I'm good, bro. I was staying up all night just for that one class. I said, nah, bro. It was to the point where I was studying atoms so much, I could see the atoms in my hand. I could see the flow in the plants. You know what I'm saying?
Believe it or not, man, biology was actually one of my favorite classes. I don't know what it is in regards to it being one of the sciences. Like, biology was very fun, like learning about life itself, because essentially that is what biology is. You learn a lot about your body, you learn a lot about organisms and things of that nature. So it was always interesting. It was very fascinating. But that's awesome, man. So you basically transitioned to criminal justice because you saw what happened with the Black Lives Matter, and you was inspired to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
Right. So throughout the whole time when you was in the criminal justice program, did you ever think about switching from wanting to be a lawyer? Like, was that always the dream throughout the whole time you was a criminal justice major? Or
so that was the dream. But when I did a particular project when I was in criminal justice. Mm-hmm. So when I was doing this particular project, we had to go to a courthouse.
Okay.
And when I went to that courthouse, I think we talked about that. Yeah. See, that's why I got you here. So I know I ain't capping.
Trust me. Everything that you saying, I'm just here to confirm, brother.
So I went to the courthouse, and I was like, these lawyers are lying their butts off. I said, morally, my spirit couldn't align with it. And that at that point, I didn't want to be a lawyer no more.
Yeah, man, it's so interesting, man, because I did the same project, right? And then we went to the courthouse. We went to Upper Marlboro, and I was in family court. Bro, family court is vicious. Like, when you see the things that happen, you know, you got young people going up there. They probably only like 21, 22. You know, they have a couple kids. And it's like, it just kind of goes to show why family planning is important. You know, getting married before you have kids. And this is not to shun anybody who has a kid out of wedlock, but it also just goes to show when you do get married and you have kids, you may not necessarily encounter those issues, man, because, I mean, just seeing young people go to court, you know, just not being able to work out their differences, the guy being placed on child support, the guy disrespecting the mother of his kids. I mean, I'm looking at that, and even I understand, like, the whole moral standpoint, but me, in regards to my emotional health, I'm like, I can't do that. I can't see people go through that. Because I know, me just being a believer in Christ, it's like I feel as though there's more that I can add to that aside from just being a lawyer. And like you said, man, lawyers are not always telling the truth. They have their own agenda that they got to go by.
And
so
you need them, but I can't do it, bro. Like, when I have to lie for somebody that committed a crime, I can't do that, bro. Or, you know, do anything to get them out. I couldn't do it, bro.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, man. Being a defense attorney, man. I mean, shout out to defense attorneys, but that's just not for me.
It's just not me, bro.
I can't. So when did you transition to tech? Because I know after college, it took you some time before you actually got into tech. So early on, you know, you did have aspirations in high school of going into tech. But when did that flame start? When did it come back on after college? Was it a little bit before college or right after college did that flame come on for wanting to get back into tech?
So it happened in college, and I think we talked about it. I mean, we talked about it many times.
Various times we did.
Because we was like, hey, bro, this ain't going nowhere. Because we would talk, what we're going to do, either become a police officer or a lawyer.
Tell everybody about the criminal justice field, because people think, like, criminal justice is a great field, but when it comes to, and we just being real, when it comes to actually finding a career, it's very vague. I mean, it's a pool of options. And if we being real, one of the reasons why we talked about tech was why? Because it was lucrative. You know what I mean? And we live in the DMV. Like, I don't know, you probably know this, man, but it's like one of the most expensive areas to live in. DC and Maryland, I believe, is 2 and 3 in regards to, like, average income, right? And this is just now, but even back then, it was still pretty high. So one of the reasons why we was even talking about tech, because we was like, man, going to criminal justice, we don't really know what the cap is, and the cap is probably very low in regards to what our annual income would be. You know what I mean? So, but please tell people about, like, criminal justice and one of the reasons why we even switched to tech.
So I'm going to be honest with the viewers, because we're both criminal justice majors. When you're in the criminal justice program, they don't really help you with career guidance, meaning they don't tell you what you can do. So when I was in criminal justice, they only make it seem you can be police officer, which you don't need a degree for.
Don't need a degree.
A lawyer, which you technically don't need the criminal justice degree for.
You can be an English major.
Yeah, anything. Probably biology major.
Probably biology. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, to pass that test.
Yeah.
Or a corrections officer, or just some roles that only pay you like $50K or lower, which you really don't really need a degree for.
Right.
To be very honest with you. So if you're in criminal justice, just pay attention to those things. And that's why when you go to college, you got to go for a purpose, because criminal justice is a good degree to have. And I'm not saying knocking it because I have one, but just consider that when you're trying to major in criminal justice, or you can get a clearance, and I'm going to get into that later.
Right, absolutely. We definitely going to talk about the clearance process. But, yeah, man, talk about our master plan when we was talking about getting into tech, man. Like, how was that?
So we was just talking about it. I think at the time when we was in there, we was talking about, oh, yeah, we can just get a security plus. Because at the time, if you can get a security plus, you can get into sub really quick.
Absolutely.
And then also, it was AWS. I think AWS is big. Like, if you got an AWS back then when it first started, you can get a cloud engineering job really quickly.
Right.
They just wanted this certification.
Right.
Because a lot of these recruiters don't know what it is. They just trying to get people they just need bodies at the time.
Right.
So we was talking about that, and I think we was talking. I was like, how are we going to get this security plus? When we was in criminal justice, and we just thought it was foreign.
Right.
We just thought we couldn't do that as black people.
Absolutely. And that's the nail in the coffin, because we did not think that can be achieved by us. You know, being black people, graduating from an HBCU, we didn't think we can obtain that. So even we continue to just think, you know what, that's probably something that's far along in the future. But, you know, I want you to talk about, because obviously we had this conversation, but this was our plan, right? This is something that we was looking forward to. But let's talk about the process within that plan. So life after college, what was that? Because we're actually going to get into the whole clearance process, right? So what was your first job after college?
So I will also tell people, when you're in college, make sure you get a good network, because at the time, me and O was friends. I mean, we were still building a relationship. At first, we had a rough ending because he did and at the time, he didn't know I was going through a lot of stuff, but he did projects for me.
I think it's a perfect time to tell people how we met, right? Yeah. So let me tell people how we met. So we had a project. I forgot the name of the teacher in the class, but it was criminal justice related anyway. So we had a project. I was supposed to present my part. He was supposed to present his part. So teacher calls us up. I go up. He whispers in my ear. He said, "Hey, oh man, I ain't even do the work, man. My bad. Can you do my part for me?" I'm like, "What?" So I'm like, "Yo, I'm not cool with this dude. I don't like this dude. I ain't talking to him for the rest of the semester, you know." And I went ahead and did my thing. And then after that, man, one thing I always loved about Chris, man, he has a genuine heart. So he always comes to me like, "Oh, my bad, I got you, man. I'm gonna make sure I make up for it." And ever since then, we was just cool, because I always felt his genuine spirit, and he always had a fervor about him and wanting to improve, right? So, like, even, you know, life after college, one thing about you is you was a go-getter. That was the mentality that you had. So please talk about like that to college, man, and keeping that fire burning. Like, what was that like? What was your first job? And basically, like, you know, the transition.
So having that fire from college, as we know, like, I didn't always have a fire. I had to develop it over time, and I did look out for you during the college time. So you can't deny that, right?
No, you know, this my side of the story, you know. But how he may tell it will be different. You know what I'm saying?
But I always wanted to be that dog. You know what I'm saying? We did businesses, we did the vending machine. So life out of college, I'm just gonna break it down like this. I always had that fire. I always wanted to be the best. Even now, like, I want to be the best of the best. You know, even when in our careers, you know, I always be saying, "Hey, we gotta get better." I'm always coming at you coming at me, but I always had to keep that fire, because in the end of the day, I wanted to have something I never had. Because you know, living in DC is just seeing that life is only good for other races versus not for black people. So I always kept that. So my first job out of college, I was a background investigator, and having a network with my good boy Osasu right here, he was able to give me a referral for the job to be a background investigator. So I did this job. Did this job, and at first we didn't really get a clearance, right?
At first, no. Once we applied for the job, remember the clearance process was about like 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
So we didn't, basically, like, during that time, you remember I was working at JCPenney as a security manager. So I was waiting for the clearance to get approved before we even got into the role. And I think it was the same for you.
Yeah. So we wait into this process, and so I'm working as a background investigator. I went through the process, and a background investigator, by the way, is people that investigate clearances. Either it can be a top secret, top secret SCI, top secret full scope. They're the people in the background that's verifying all the things that you put on your SF-86. So that's what we did as a career. And as I was working this career, and that's when that was my first introduction to clearances. You know, at the time, we didn't even know what a clearance was, bro.
We didn't.
We didn't even know the value.
Not at all.
Because even when I talked to you, it was either like we had no idea what it can do.
Right.
And,
but we didn't have any idea. But I remember you always used to tell me it was a good thing.
Yeah.
Even though when it came to being in depth about what it would mean for us going forward, we did realize it was a good thing for us, because we saw that we had many opportunities that presented themselves to us because we had a clearance. So talk about a couple of those jobs that you had before, and we're going to talk about how you actually transitioned into tech.
I'll tell you.
But please talk about, because I think one thing people need to understand, that it does take some time, right? And we're not saying that it's the same for everybody, because obviously one shoe doesn't fit all. Like, your story is obviously different from mine, even though we're very close, but somebody else's story may be different.
I agree.
Some people right after college was able to get into a tech job, right? So it's different for everybody. But please, because I think people need to know
Okay,
your story and how long it took in regards before you actually transitioned or broke those doors in order for you to get into tech.
So at the time, I was like 5 years, and I think I did like
5 years after college, right?
Yeah, I think 4 or 5 years. I think around 5 years, right?
About 4 or 5 years, yep.
So I worked as a background investigator.
Okay.
I worked as an intel analyst. I worked as a program manager, and I did a lot of odd jobs in the government. Because, at the government at the time, you have a clearance, but they'll put you in any job that required, like, a clearance. Like, it wasn't a real career.
It wasn't a career,
So
right? It was like a placeholder.
Yeah, so I'm doing these jobs, and I'm like, man, I ain't making no money. I'm only getting, like, $50K, 60K at the most, and I thought I was rich. 60K? I was like, man, I'm making 60K. What the hell am I doing 60K? You know what I'm saying?
Right. You got bills to pay.
Yeah, but I was doing all these jobs, and I was like, and I think I came back to you, and I was like, hey, bro, this ain't it, bro.
Yeah.
This ain't it, bro. We got to do something. We got a clearance, which is a very valuable situation because clearances help you get into the government. But it's like, bro, like, what are we going to do? And I think we was discussing different routes. I think I took the plunge and just I think we started working on, either we was working on Security Plus or the Masters. Which one was that?
You was working on your Masters during the time. I forgot which job you was doing. Where you was doing your Masters and you was working that job, but I remember you was working on your Masters, and I think a little bit after that, that's when you started working on Security Plus. But I remember I got my Security Plus before you, and then you got yours a little bit after.
Yeah, so I went and got my Masters in Cybersecurity, and when I got my Masters in Cybersecurity, I'm thinking like the floodgates about to open, bro.
Right.
And I did this program, it took 2 years, and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm about to get all these jobs, and they about to come to me. But the thing about it, bro, I would get to them to talk to me. But the main thing, they was like, bro, like, what can you do?
Right.
Like, what can you do for us? I couldn't do anything.
So please, cause I think it's important for you to share with the audience, how important is it when it comes to degrees compared to certifications? Like, do you think one has more value than the other, or do you think they're of equal value?
And when you're first trying to get in cybersecurity, I think a certification has more value in the beginning.
Right.
Because like the certification shows that you can learn what it is to be in cybersecurity, and we both know, bro. Like working in the field, there's some people that don't even know the terminologies. It's a different language. Working in tech, I can switch it up, and you can switch it up. And we could talk a language that the audience won't even understand.
Right, that's absolutely true.
Yeah, but I also think that knowing skills and things that you can show to people is more valuable. Is about the same as having a cert. Because I know people that got into the field without even having a certification. But I think overall having a degree will help get you to more money. Because there's been situations where I asked for money.
Right.
But they couldn't justify giving me money because I only had a certain.
You had more bargaining power.
Yeah, so they give you more money just off of the cert. So you can use it as that. But if you're going to get a master's, I would just recommend having your job paid for.
Right. So would you say that experience trumps all of that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I mean, and the thing is, obviously, we want to help people get into tech, and they may not have the experience, but I think what you just said is important when it comes to having a degree, but also having those certifications, man, because that stuff is important as well. So you was working on your master's. What job were you doing at the time?
I was working as I think a threat analyst or something. I was working as an intel analyst at the time.
Intel analyst.
Either an intel analyst or a project manager.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was working as an intel analyst.
Intel analyst. Okay, awesome. So now I want to talk about the transition, right? When was that moment when you realized, all right, it's time for me to get into tech, right? Was it right after you got your Security Plus? Was it a little bit before that? When was that moment where you was like, you know what, I'm tired of doing these remedial jobs, these placeholder positions that aren't necessarily going to propel my career. I need to actually do something where I can say this is a career and this is where I want to stay. When was that moment for you?
Yeah, it was like at this one moment. I think I was a project manager at this time. I was an intel analyst, and I went to a project manager.
I remember.
And I got fired from a job.
Okay.
And the job was only paying like $50K, but I was grateful at the time because I had a situation happen at work, and I had to transition. So thankful for that job. But I got fired. They walked me out. I don't get fired for just work related. It was just a situation that happened.
Sure.
You know,
we understand.
I work. Yeah, but so when I got fired and I had my Security Plus at the time, I was like, listen, bro, I can't keep doing this no more. I was like, I need something stable. So I was like, at that time, I was like, listen, bro, I don't care if I don't get another job. I literally at the girl I had at the time, I literally told her, listen, I'm going to be unemployed until I get a job.
Right.
Straight up. And I think you remember that.
Yeah.
And I was like, bro, I can't. Because I think you suggested a little job. I said, bro, I can't do it, bro.
Right.
I ain't care. And I think at the time, I was about to, it was getting to a time I was going, I don't ask for money.
Yeah, I remember. You told me this after the fact, and I don't know why you never shared this with me, But I do understand the male pride. But
pride, bro.
Yeah, but the Bible tells us, pride comes before the fall. So that's something that we have to keep in mind, because sometimes because of our pride, we don't want to reach out for help, because even being in this space, we understand that we don't know everything, right? I forgot who was the famous philosopher who said that the one thing that I know is that I know nothing, right? So you're always constantly evolving in this field. Like, you got to learn. And it's some things you teach me. And sometimes I wasn't really humble enough, but I'd be like, you know what, Chris, you was right. Can you show me how to do this? You know what I mean? Yeah. Because you think that you know it all. But, I mean, share with me that time, like when you didn't have a job, like what was that feeling? Because one thing you always share with me, man, like pressure either creates diamonds or it creates dust. Yeah. And obviously through your story, we know that it created diamonds. So what was it that helped you in that progression to say, you know what, I'm not going to stay here. I'm going to elevate myself out of this bottomless pit that I'm in.
Yeah, that almost bring me to tears, bro. Because it's like, it hits you, because it's like, when you're in that time.
I know, but I remember you was calling me every day, like, because you were working like some small jobs. You would quit, be like, bro, I ain't doing this no more.
Nah, because I would work at Giant.
Yeah.
I worked at Giant. I worked at, I was just doing odd jobs, but I said I wasn't going to do a career unless it's like a career job, unless it's in tech. But at the time, bro, I felt at my bottom. Mm-hmm. And I think during that time, it was during the virus that happened.
COVID.
Yeah, COVID happened, and I was down. I was down at work for a long time.
Yeah, so you was dealing with COVID, not having a job.
I had beard growed out, looking crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking crazy. The girl at the time was like, like coming home and saying little things that it started to get like.
Started to bother you a little bit.
Yeah, just little things that would throw me off. Like, I gotta, I'm taking up the mantle, and I'm like, that hurt my soul.
Yeah, because you carrying the load, but you don't feel as though like you're able to, break some of that off for somebody else to kind of carry and help you through this very dark time that you was in.
And then also too, bro, it's like I was applying to so many jobs, and it was just getting no. And I do want to, when we get to it, I do want to try some how I transitioned, like how I narrowed it down to get to career. But it was just, it got so bad. I was applying to so many jobs. It got so bad. I just keep saying no every day. I'm hearing like 30 no's, 40 no. Man, I was telling you about this, and it's like, man, sometimes I didn't, because it's like, it hurt, bro. Every day you just keep saying no. You don't got no job. You got COVID. You looking crazy. I didn't have no confidence. I was done, bro.
Right. So but I hear you. But to get out of this somber moment, because just like in church, but God. Yeah, right?
But God.
So what was that but God moment? Because you just said that you applied for so many jobs, and when did you finally strike gold?
Yeah, getting out of the moment, I had to thank the Lord, straight up, because and at the time I wasn't into God as much as I was now. Right. But I just was like, man. But I remember who I was. What they say in Black Panther? Remember who you are. I was like, listen, I'm Chris. What I'm saying? I'm a dog. I said, I'm going to get out of this. And then after that, bro, I had to, like I said, I had to be humble.
Yeah.
Hey, you are in cybersecurity at the time. Hey, bro, help a brother out, bro. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, can you kind of tell me, like, I had to, be humble. I said, can you kind of tell me what careers you think that will fit me? Because at the time, I was applying to everything. And then you kind of broke it down and kind of explained, too, like how you broke it down to me.
Right, because I was able to kind of feed you information during that time, because this is when you was leaning more towards, all right, the jobs I was applying for are going to be tech-related jobs, right? Mm-hmm. And did you have your clearance at the time?
Yeah.
You had your clearance at the time. So you was, and I remember we was talk all the time, and it was highs and lows, as it would be with anybody who doesn't have a job and they're just looking for that breakthrough. But when was that breakthrough? What was your first job in tech, right? And how did you transition into that job?
Okay, so like I remember when you was talking to me, you was like, "Hey, Chris, I think Information System Security Officer or ISO or GRC or RMF." He said, "Chris, I think you might want to apply for that because I think at the time you got a job in that field."
Right.
He said it's an easier transition.
Right.
So I was like, okay, so the first step for everybody that's trying to get into cybersecurity, you got to first find out what you want to do. At the time, I had everything to do the career, but I didn't know what I really wanted to do in the career. So the first thing is when the step I talked to O, I wanted to become an ISO. Okay, what do I need to become an ISO? So I looked at O's resume, and at the time, he still is my mentor at the time. So I was like, can I see your resume? So you showed me what is required of an ISO, and I was like, I did all this in college.
Yeah.
So it's like,
and you also did some of that in your master's program, because what was some of, because at the time when you was doing your master's, there was something else that you wanted to do. What was that job?
I want to do digital forensics.
Digital forensics, right?
Yeah, so a lot of that we did. So, for example, like RMF frameworks, we was going off the NIST guidelines in college. Like, we was going through it. There's a lot of documentation reading for cyber we was doing. And I took a lot of classes in it. So I was like, okay. Well, I had an experience. So I put that in my resume. What I did was I understood RMF and things like that. So I would go on YouTube and I would go and talk to O. And then I would also just do research to make sure I can talk well on this in an interview. Right. So the minute because I had the experience, I picked where I wanted to go. So then I started applying to jobs. Once I started applying to jobs, it was like night and day. Because it was like, okay, now the jobs are starting to come at me. Right. And I would get higher and higher to the point where I'm at the hiring manager.
Right.
But when I first got my first job in cybersecurity, I was talking to the hiring manager, and he was asking me, because I put all this stuff in there. And another thing for people, just don't put stuff on your resume, because they're going to, whatever you put on your resume is liable to be asked in the interview.
Can I share the story about my first job in tech? So I worked at General Dynamics, right? And you remember General Dynamics Mission Systems. I was an engineer, right? No experience. And this is why I say everybody's story is different, right? The Bible talks about how, wide and broad is the gate that leads to destruction, and many go through it. But it also talks about narrow is the gate, and only if that leads to life, and only a few find it. And I'm only saying that because mine was more so like the wide, where it's like I got a lending hand, or somebody was basically able to put in a good word for me. Whereas though for you, it was the narrow way, because not too many people go through that gate. Whereas though, like, they had to get it out the mud. Because a lot of people now in tech, it's like, oh, I'm going to put in a good word for you. Right, so you kind of got helped in order for you to get in. And I always tell you, I'm not gonna lie, I got help. So my first job was General Dynamics. I would admit,
I was like, oh man, you keep doing that pretty boy, man. Yeah. I was like, man, he do a little look with his beard.
Nah, man. Like shout out to my friend Alex, man. She definitely put me on for my first job. And I was a mid-level, so that was crazy.
That was you was making like 80
at the time. I was making 85, and you got to think about it. Like, going into that position, you should already kind of know. You should be fully functional by yourself. Meaning, like, you don't necessarily need to be trained by somebody. You got to work on your own.
They don't train you.
Right. So, I had to get it out the mud, like, in the aspect of I had to also do a lot of homework, right? So a lot of the work that I was doing at the job, I also had to make sure that I was researching and doing it at home. And it also was a good thing because I was in a good situation where I had a lot of black people that I worked with, right? One dude, I think he was from some country in Africa, and it was another dude that was actually from Georgia, and it was another dude that was from North Carolina. So we kind of all banded together, and they used to even help me out when it came to just learning how to be a cybersecurity engineer. But I wanted to talk about how, like, it was, I remember one person, obviously I'm not going to say their name, they had all these certs on their resume. Right? All these credentials on their resume, and they didn't know how to do something simple as pinging the IP. Right? I mean, these are very simple, elementary things, y'all, that you should know. And that person didn't know how to do that. And I'm not blasting the person at all, but we see so many cases of people just putting things on their resume that they don't necessarily know how to do. And these jobs will challenge you.
They will challenge you.
They will challenge you and see if you actually know what you're doing. If you don't, You out of there. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to say that.
And that's for the people that resume pack. You put red, and that happened to me, and I learned this mistake. I would never do it again. I know red hat. That's all they asked me is red hat. And the lady literally told me, if you don't know it, don't put it on your resume. And the interview didn't go well. Yeah, but at the same time, I learned that lesson today. If you don't know it, don't put it because they're going to expect it. And they're going to ask you. And if you can't, because even now when you do interviews, they'll know I can talk to any of you. You can talk to anybody. I can talk to. I can know in like less than 10 seconds if you know anything.
Right.
And like you said, there's a lot of people in this field that we work with and throughout our career.
Right.
They have all this stuff on a resume, but they're high-ranking positions and they really don't know anything. And that's the truth. But people skills help. Soft skills help.
All right, man. So, Chris, I want you to let's circle back. I want you to talk about like how you were able to transition into cybersecurity.
Yeah. So the first thing is I already got the experience with the degrees, the certifications. So I picked what I want to do from what you told me to be an RMF, risk management, or ISO. So once I got your resume, I tailored my resume to that and learned the stuff I need to know to answer stuff in interviews.
Right.
So the last step, I just applied to jobs, and when I started narrowing down my job selection, I was getting a lot of interviews, and I was actually going to get hired in IT before I got hired because I became an ISO with no experience. But it's either I was going to be a help desk or I was going to be an ISO. So then I went to did my interview. This was my final interview before I got hired, and he was asking me all types of questions because of stuff I put on my resume, and then I told him straight up, I don't know this position, but I'm willing to learn. This is what I've done. And he just told me, well, I'll just give you opportunity. And then I got my first cybersecurity job. I was making $75,000, which to me was rich. But in the field, the field is a high. So being an ISO, you can make between 75 and 200 with a top secret in the DMV area. So,
and that's for entry level ISO.
Yeah, for entry level, it's about 75 to 90.
Okay, but when you came and got your first cybersecurity role, you came in at a mid level, right?
On paper, I was a mid-level, but internally, I was. Sometimes they put that you're a higher level just so they can get more money.
Right.
I was a low level, but when I first got in, bro, I first did the job. They was like, "Hey, you gotta do an ATO." I was like, "Huh?" And then the guy, my guy at the time, he was like, "I'm on vacation." Because at that time,
I remember because they basically put everything at your feet and said, "Hey, you gonna have to take care of this."
I didn't know none of that, bro.
With no experience.
I was like, what is an ATO? How do you fill it out? He just gave me a form and just started putting. I was like, bro, like, what is this? And he was gone for a couple weeks, so I had to learn trial by fire when I first started. I had to learn what STIGs are. Wow. I keep in mind, I do know the RMF process, at the time. And it was just trial by fire, bro. And I had to just go out. Even one of my experiences, I was reading the emails. I keep getting these vulnerability scans. And I was like, yeah, so it's a lot of vulnerabilities on there. Who deals with that?
Right.
It was like, you? I was like, oh, who do you even talk to? And then even, how you are being an ISO, you keep getting a runaround.
Yeah, absolutely. So you basically had like little to no help.
I would say I did have help. The people that I had in place, he was experienced. He kept a lot of the vultures off of me because he'll go into meetings and cover everything, make sure that nobody bothered me. Also, I had another female colleague. She was a straight dog, what she did, and she helped teach me in ways. Even after we from my first manager, she took over and she taught me a lot of stuff on how to, and she let me do the role myself, and that's what I really learned. You know what I'm saying?
That's awesome, man. Just to have a community of people to kind of help you as you was growing into this role. But you said something about an ATO. For those that don't know, what is a ATO?
So an ATO in the federal government is authorized to operate. So for example, when you're bringing certain systems inside the government, for example, like I'm gonna just say Apple. Say you're trying to bring an Apple into the government. It has to be accredited to be able to be ran inside the government. So an ATO is an authorization to operate. You have to go through the RMF process. What is it? Prepare, authorize, categorize, implement, continuous monitoring. And I think that's all the steps.
And you also got to select the controls.
And select the controls. So it has to go through that process before it can even be a system in the government. Right. And then when you submit an ATO every year or every 2 years or every 3 years, you're resubmitting that so it can be reauthorized to be able to use in the government. But if it's not approved to run, it's not going to run in the government no more.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So since now we're kind of at the RMF, right, the risk management framework of things, do you want to let people know what exactly is risk management framework?
So risk management framework is basically mitigating risk. Sometimes when in risk management, you're just there's different ways you can go about it. For example, say there's a vulnerability. You can either choose to accept the risk, you can choose to mitigate the risk, or just pass it on to something else.
Right.
So that's what you're doing throughout the whole process, because you can't mitigate everything. Some things you gotta let be there, because if you do, it can break the system.
Right.
So that's the process of risk management. You're constantly on a daily basis deciding the risk on things, especially with government systems, vulnerabilities, STIGs, and you're doing that on a constant basis. So that's the basis of risk management framework.
Absolutely, and that's a perfect point, because I always looked at it as the template that companies use in order for them to secure the information system. So please tell everybody as well, why do companies use RMF? Like, why is that a tool that they use, especially when they're contracting with the government?
So they do risk management because, again, you're bringing these systems to the government, and you just want to make sure it's secure for them. And you do know there's all these cyber attacks that are coming up apart. Like, you know, there's some big ones, even assault typhoons affecting phone call, text messages. You got some Apache vulnerabilities that's coming out. You even got vulnerabilities that send things to Microsoft and sends data to Microsoft. So for you to have that in the government, it's an essential, because the government is very important, and working these jobs is a privilege, and you protecting these systems is for the whole national security, for these companies like Department of Energy. All this is helping us, and we have important data in there. So risk management is very, very important, especially with securing these systems.
Absolutely, man. I agree 100%. Even just thinking about some of the bad actors that are out there when it comes to hacking, like, our systems are always being exposed, and they get guys like us to make sure that it's not, or at least we can mitigate the risk of exposure to the best that we can. Yeah, man. So, I mean, RMF is absolutely dope. So, you started off as a entry-level ISO, right? Information System Security Officer. And you are now what? I would like to say that you're more so like a consultant in a sense,
to be
right?
honest with you. Yeah, at this point, because for my program now, you know how it is. Y'all, majority of the time, y'all come to me about certain things.
Yeah, you are IT consultant, right? We give you that title. It may not be on paper, but we give you on title based on the information that you're able to share on us, and you have a wealth of information. But I do want to talk about, like, what was that process like, starting as an entry level ISO and now basically being a consultant? Like, what are some of the things that happened throughout that time? Because I know there was a lot of highs and lows. I want the audience to know, how did you get to that point? Because some people get into it and they're fearful, right? You got into a situation you wasn't necessarily too sure. Obviously, you had people to help you out that kind of groomed you. But one thing that we know is you got to perfect your craft, right? So what was the perfecting of your craft, and how was that like, in order to start from an entry-level ISO to now basically IT consultant? Yeah,
so basically getting into the field, I'm not going to lie to the audience, I had imposter syndrome.
Right.
I didn't feel like I belonged in that room.
Right.
And I felt like that for over 6 months when I first started.
In your first 6 months?
Yeah, so I would be on meetings with these government officials. They're saying things. There's been times I've been called out or embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really hard.
Right.
It was really extremely hard to talk to these different. There's been times where I'll talk to a project manager at the time in PM, and he would hear me say something crazy to me, and he would go back to my manager and say all types of stuff. Like, why is he here? And I was like, I went through a lot. Even with you, I used to hit you up how to create documentation. Yeah. At the time, you never really created documentation.
Right.
Or these various incident response plans. And I would do these documents, and I would get cussed out. Like, what the hell is this? Like, what is that? And I'm like, I was going to quit at one point, bro. I couldn't handle it. So I would just keep doing this role. I would get like I said, the ACAT scans. I didn't know how to create poems. Poems was now that I look at poems as baby now. And poems, by the way, are plan of action milestones to mitigate risk. I was doing the ATO. I got cussed out because I got it. In the government, when you get a package sent back to you at least 2 or 3 times, it makes the program look bad. Right. There was actually a time I actually submitted. I tested all the controls, and my dumb self actually deleted all the documentation on the.
You deleted the documentation?
I had to re-put all the documentation for all the controls.
From scratch?
Yeah, from scratch.
Oh, that's crazy.
Because I didn't know what I was doing. And then one time I tested all the controls, and then it came back 100 controls as non-compliant.
Oh,
bro,
man.
I don't know. It got to the point where they just stopped talking to me because I think I was on my way.
Was this after the ATO or like
it was during the ATO?
It was during the ATO.
And
you had 100 controls you had to test?
Yes, I was there. I had to stay there for like 3-4 days to fix everything, get the document signed. I messed it up. I didn't know what I was doing, bro.
Right.
So through all that, I think I was in the program for like 6 months, and I think I was applying for jobs, and I was like, it's time for me to go. But I went to go talk to a guy.
Okay.
And he told me, like, I talked to a guy, and he was telling me, hey, bro, like, it's not going to get better. If you can't survive here, how you going to survive somewhere else? It's going to be a never-ending cycle. So I thought about it, and then I had some people talk to me at the time, and they just said, man, they was just, and any time my girl, I was like, she just told me, listen, you got to do what you got to do. And I didn't want to look bad in front of her. So one day I prayed about it. And I was slowly coming to God at the time. You know what I'm saying? So I was praying about it, talking to you. And I was telling you, and I know you don't believe it till you get there. I'll be telling you the whole truth, but you sometimes.
But again, like you said, like our journey was a little different. But go ahead.
So I'm in this role, bro, and I'm like, what am I going to do? So at one point, something just snapped, bro. I said, listen, bro, I had my woke moment. I said, bro, if I'm going down fighting, bro.
The tech woke moment.
Yeah, it's my woke moment, tech woke moment. And I was like, listen, bro, I had to do what I would do. I would come early. I think I was coming like 5, 6 a.m.
Right.
I would leave like 5, sometimes 7 o'clock at night. I would come home late. I would go. It was to the point where I was going on the weekends. The girl thinking I'm cheating. I'm like, listen, calling the office to see if I'm really there. I'm really there at 5 in the morning. Sometimes they're 3 in the morning.
And you just there to keep your job, man.
Yeah, I was doing that. And it got to the point where I became a beast, bro.
Right.
And then that's where I became and then that's when the contract was ending. I think I came back from Italy at the time.
Right.
And then I had got a so basically for people that don't know, when you're in the government, sometimes the contract ends as a contractor.
Right.
So then somebody else would take up the contract. So, it was like so they gave me a really big salary raise because I asked for it. I literally asked for it, and I didn't have on paper the credentials for that position, but I didn't know I've been working, and they know what I've done to work that system.
Right.
So at the time we was only getting 6-month ATOs, and then so I gave them a price. I can give you a range, a high range. It was between 90 and 130.
Mm-hmm.
So they gave me a big raise. And then I had to really think about it. I still had imposter syndrome again. Mm-hmm. I was like, they're paying me a lot of money to do this role. Mm-hmm. Bro, why are they paying me? Mm-hmm. Why am I here? Am I finessing them? Mm-hmm. Or what's going on? Then I think I talked to you at the time. I talked to various people. Mm-hmm. I talked to you. What's his name? Mm-hmm. What's his name?
You talking about Ken?
I talked to Ken. Mm-hmm. And I was like, bro, and I ain't gonna lie. When I first got the raise, I turned it down.
I remember you telling me that. You did turn it down, but you think that had a lot to do with imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I just didn't think I can do it. I thought I needed certain people because my manager was leaving. I thought I needed him to be successful.
Right. But you know what, even with that, man, like you learned so much from your manager.
Yeah.
You know, and even to the point, like you just said, you became a beast.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think sometimes when we're in the process, we don't realize how much progress we made.
I didn't know.
You know, how much we grown into the role until you talk to somebody like me. You like, what?
Yeah, I'll be like,
what's wrong? You ain't got no documentation?
I was talking to you.
You ain't do IABs?
That's like you still have a job, bro?
Yeah.
And then after that, I think Ken called me, and he's like, Chris, man, you need to take that role. So I thought about it 24 hours, and I know what? I called the company back.
Right.
And I said, hey, is the offer still on the table? Yeah.
Right.
He sent me the joint. I signed it. I mean, it kind of looked shady because I told everybody I wasn't coming, but I took the role, and then after that, this is the point where I took it to another level. So during this process, when I think it was the second year or third year, so I'm literally managing a system. I have a manager
by yourself,
by myself,
right?
So I created the documentation. We're handling IAVMs. IAVMs are things sent from the government that you got to make sure. It's just basically notices that let you know what's.
Just to patch up your devices, network devices typically.
Yeah, I'm creating processes for STIGs. I'm creating STIGs are things you use to harden systems, by the way.
Right.
And you can get them on cyber.mil. And I'm creating process for STIGs. I'm creating process to handle IAVMs. I have a tracker, and even though we talked about trackers at the time,
right.
And at the time we was doing things that never been done. We was having site visits. I was leading that.
Right.
We was having adversarial assessments. I was leading those projects. I've done everything you can do as an ISO at the time.
So you would say you're a well-rounded ISO.
Yeah, and then and then we had the ATO after, and I think we got like almost a 2-year ATO, and then I got so much praise from the program.
Right.
It was like, and then at the time I was mentoring a lot of people.
Right.
Like even you, my man, you was mentoring, but it came like to a point where I'm mentoring you.
Yeah, I mean that's how it is.
You know what I'm saying? No disrespect. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The student basically, surpassed the master. I mean that's just how it was. But I mean that just goes to show that your journey was just a lot different from mine, because obviously you was under somebody, and I know the person that you was under, like they was very good at their job. They was probably, because I think, was he an ISM or was he just? He was like a senior level ISM.
This man was working in there for 20 years,
right?
And he knows his stuff he knows the stuff. And then also I had another colleague. She was like 10 years in,
right?
So I was able to. When you in environments, and we work together now,
right?
So it's like when you're in environments where people are sharpening, you just get better.
You just get better.
You have no choice.
Absolutely. Because one thing I would say, and we always fed off each other, and there's so many things when it comes to being an ISO or just RMF in general. Like you got poems, we got STIGs, like we mentioned, we got to test controls, creating documentation. And I know one of the things that you basically shared with me is putting together documentation. Like, how important is documentation when it comes to being an ISO?
Yeah, so what I've noticed, even in the government space, most programs don't have documentation.
Correct.
And it's because, and I'm going to say this, there's no process in place. There's no templates in place.
Right.
So they don't know how to create documentation. So
right.
It's very important because, like, they help mitigate controls.
Right.
Mitigate is basically remediate controls.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So you're testing the controls to see if they're good or not compliant or just not applicable. So if you don't have that documentation, you can go send that to a SCAR, and they're going to be like, so you're saying this is compliant, but there's nothing documented and signed.
Right.
If a program don't have that, it's not going to last too long.
Right.
Actually, it's a horrible program, in my opinion.
Right, if they don't have any documentation. Because like you said, there's nothing letting the SCAR rep know that we're in compliance with this or we're actually doing this. Right, because documentation is important. And the documentation is not signed, then we know that's not a document.
Yeah, it's
and some documents obviously need to be signed every time that we're doing the ATO. But I remember, because I was actually pretty good at, STIGs. And I think a lot of that had something to do with, my engineering background. Because when I was at General Dynamics, I had to learn Red Hat. So when it came to, stigging against, a Red Hat satellite server or any of the Red Hat servers, that was a little bit more easier for me just because, when it came to having conversations with the engineers, I kind of knew, all right, man, y'all didn't follow the fixed actions, man, in order for us to get this thing, up and going. Y'all just pencil whip stuff just because you're tired of hearing from me. And oftentimes we deal with that. But I do want you to talk about, because even with documentation, there's things that we got to get from engineers and other people. And also even with STIGs, there are things that we need to get from engineers. So, please tell people about how it is in regards to the dynamic between an ISO and the engineers, that relationship.
So being an ISO, you're kind of like that principal that's making sure everybody follows the rules.
That's the perfect analogy. I definitely concede what you just said. I agree.
Then the engineers are like those naughty kids that think they try to get over on you.
Right.
So as the one thing I will tell some people, if you're becoming an ISO in the federal government, make sure you get a POC list, because if you don't have a POC list, which is a point of content list, you don't know who is for what.
Agree.
So
I agree.
When I first got into the government field, the engineers would get over on me because I didn't know who was with what. I'd be like, hey, ain't you the WSUS administrator? Like, no, I'm not. And then I go to my PM, yes, he is. And I'll be like, hey, I'll tag him. And then he'll be like, yeah, I am. And I'm like, so you got to make sure you have a POC list. The dynamic is, and that's the principal and the bad little kids. So with dealing with engineers, they naturally don't like us. It is what it is. So with them, you got to make sure when you're emailing them, make sure you CC your boss. Make sure you have people on there. And you make sure you're on top of them, even if you got to create a chart. And that's the point of plan of action, so you can get reminded when to reach back out to them.
Right.
So it's a hard process. Then too, you can ask for something. They know exactly what you're asking for.
They know.
But sometimes they'll send you something like, "Oh, I didn't know that you needed this." They'll just keep doing it until you get annoyed, and they know they're annoying you.
Kicking the can down the road. They'll find any way to weasel themselves out of not doing the work. And granted, they have a lot of work to do.
They do.
But they understand you ain't going to have no work. We don't get no ATO.
So you have no job. So you got to feed the baby somehow.
You got to feed the baby too. And we got to pay our rent. So help me help you. But yeah, man, like it's definitely interesting, man, the whole dynamic between engineers and ISOs. So I do want you to kind of talk about, since we're talking about, the relationship between engineers and ISOs, I want you to talk about the day-to-day being an ISO.
So the day-to-day as an ISO, I would come in. I'm just going to tell you my day-to-day. I would come in the office. The first thing you have to do as an ISO, you have to read your emails from various stakeholders.
I agree.
Stakeholders are people in the government that have a stake in that program.
Yep.
So the main person that we're listening to, if I get anything from the PM or branch chief, I'm reaching out instantly, especially if it's about the program. Also, I'm checking those emails to see if we have any vulnerabilities that need to be, like, for example, DTOs in our field, IAVMs that need to be addressed. So I'm reviewing that. So I'm checking all the emails. The next thing I would start doing is I would start reviewing the vulnerabilities. So I'll see, like, say we got a Cat 1 vulnerability, Cat 2 vulnerability, and these vulnerabilities are ACAT scans. I would check them, see what's important. Any Cat 1s we got to remediate within 30 days. Cat 2s is 60 days, and then Cat 3s is 90 days. All of them need to be mitigated or fixed, but the higher priority are the Cat 1s. And then I would take these vulnerabilities. We use a system called EMAS. It's basically a vulnerability management software. We'll put those vulnerabilities in there to create POAMs. We'll put the ACAS reports so they can be tracked in that software. And I would create the POAMs, put them out. I would create mitigations on how we're going to deal with them. Usually with mitigations, you'll reach out to the engineer, you reach out weekly, and then you close out the POAM. That's usually what I put. And mitigations are also, I'm sorry, not mitigations. Those are milestones. Milestones are steps you put to achieve the goal of remediating vulnerability. Right. Mitigations are when there's things that's already in place to help lower the risk. For example, you can have a high risk, but if you put in mitigations, like, for example, you have an ACAS scan, or it's in a DMZ, so it lowers the risk, and it keeps lowering it to it's almost obsolete. So I'm checking those, and I'm putting them in the system, and I'm managing all the vulnerabilities. Also, I'm talking to my team members, ISOs, about things that need to be improved, where we have weekly meetings. We go over IAVMs, DTOs, STIGs, and just various things. I know right now most of the government is transitioning to going to the cloud. So we have various meetings on things like that. I'm not saying that's for my program, but I'm saying that's in general. Man, and that's kind of like day to day. The main thing as an ISO, you have to have good soft skills, because 9 times out of 10 you're talking to people. And if you're not a person with soft skills, you can't go talk to somebody at their desk, control your anger, things like that. You cannot be an ISO, but that's the main day-to-day of the ISO. Do you have anything on that?
I mean, I think everything that you said is vastly important, because, checking your emails obviously is good. Like, if you have an email from, your ISM or the government PM, anybody who is basically over you, you want to make sure that you look at those emails, because even if we have tasks at the time, certain things take priority. Like, we know DTOs take priorities. IAVMs take priorities, because there's such a fast turnaround in regards to getting those things addressed and mitigated. So, it's one of those things that you said, man, like, you're looking through emails, you're making sure that you're looking at vulnerabilities. We get ACAS scans. We got to look through STIG checklists, right? And we got to make sure that engineers are actually answering the questions within the STIG checklist. So constantly throughout the day, you're sending emails back and forth.
All day.
You probably don't really get that much downtime. If you do get downtime, man, we're probably just going for lunch and then we're coming right back.
Right back.
Especially when we have an ATO that's around the corner. So yeah, I mean, everything that you just said, man, is usually what we do on a day to day.
And I forgot to say, all the things that we're doing in that day to day is to get to the ATO. So we have sometimes we're preparing for ATO for 2 years by doing all those tasks. And most of those tasks are in the monitor phase of the RMF framework. So you're monitoring the system to make sure, or continuous monitoring, I'm sorry, to make sure that you can get to that ATO to get a reaccreditation. Because if you don't get a reaccreditation, you lose your job, basically. You have no job. And you know, we've been through that.
Yeah, man. So that's awesome. So, you know, I know we talked about the day-to-day of being an ISO, but I also want to talk about who Chris is outside of work. So talk about like the work-life balance and how is being a cybersecurity professional like outside of actually, you know, doing the work? Like, what is life like outside of work?
So I get that, you know, we got to be outside of work, but outside of work, I have to constantly study to be good at my field.
Gotcha.
Constantly listening to podcasts, constantly reading. I'm reading up on a lot of AI right now because, you know, that's the future in cybersecurity and everything.
Yeah.
But then outside of that, I created the Tech Woke podcast after my journey and being an ISO, mainly because I was just tired of people not giving proper information on how to get into cybersecurity or throwing big paywalls to get into cybersecurity. So that's outside of that, I created Tech Woke podcast. And then I also travel a lot. We've been to many countries.
That's true.
Been to Colombia for the sightseeing. Mexico. I've been to Rome. I've been to Italy. I've been to a lot of places. So traveling is a big thing. I love to travel. I'm trying to go to Thailand if we can plan it as a guys, you know. Hopefully. So I'd like to travel. And I just like enjoying hanging with friends. Since I've been doing business now lately, I've been kind of out of way for going to events. I do like to go to conferences too, but you know, every now and then I do love to hang out with the guys. So we always try to do that every now and then. So that's kind of the things I'm doing outside of work. But you always got to have a work-life balance because you got to have wellness. So you got to work out because if you work too much in cybersecurity, you know, people in the field, they have that they have to tuck over their belly. You know what I'm saying? You know that little belly pouch, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you got to tuck over your belly. I'm not trying to get like that. I was getting really big at one point. Yeah, so I diet and things like that, working out. But you always got to work-life balance because this field is very, very stressful. There's people that become alcoholics. There's people that become angry. You know, so some people can take out on themselves, take it out on other people. But you got to always have that coming out. And you don't want to make it your life because this is a very, even though people make it seem like it is a great industry, but it's very, very stressful because if one thing happens, you can cost you your job.
Right, man. Let the truth be told. Yeah, man. Like trying to kind of just deal with that work-life balance is vastly important. I find myself being in the office, man, like having to get up every now and again because, you know, you don't want to get that kangaroo pouch. You know, like we got to maintain our health, man. Health is wealth, and that's important to me, and I know that's important to you. So I did hear you talk about, you know, going to tech events. So how has these tech events been important to you? How have they helped you? And also, in addition to that, why is it important to go to these tech events?
So I love going to tech events. So when about 2 years ago, I started going to mixers. Mixers are okay, and a lot of them happen in the DMV area. But I noticed when I went to mixers, I wasn't really getting the network. It was more people just trying to date. To be honest with you, to this day, and we've been to them. It's just a party. People got bottles, dancing. They drunk out their mind. Bro, ain't nobody trying to network. They only got one thing on their mind. Hey, shorty, what's up with you?
Right,
you know what I'm saying?
And you talk to people and you ask, oh, what do you do? Oh, what do you do? And you talk about it for a little bit. And at least at first that's how it is, and then later on it's like, man, am I on Park on 14th? Like, what's going on? You know,
even with you, like you trying to network. I think one guy tried to help you with clothing, and then they ghost you after.
Yeah, like I haven't heard from that person since, but that kind of just tells me like not all like tech events are like that, but there have been some good ones.
Yeah, so for me going to conferences, and I think the first conference I went to ever was TechsGiving. Shout out to the people from TechsGiving. TechsGiving was the first conference I went to, and just seeing all these different people, minorities, black people, Spanish people coming together, saying they're in tech, or even learning. I didn't even know about government contracting at the time. I learned so much about I learned how much you really get paid. You know, how much I should get paid from there. And just from going to conference, I was able to meet a lot of the guests that I have on a podcast. You got a Hurlane Muhammad, some other people. Like a lot of the people I've met at these conferences like TechGiving. I went to Govtech Con, met a lot of people.
Right.
I've been to even I've been to TechGiving, Govtech Con, even Diversitech. I went to Diversitech. And shout out, they have an event coming up soon in March. Diversitech, I met a lot of good people, and these people love this field and they want to help minorities in general. But I will say, going forward this year, and and you also, when you go to these networks, you got to make sure you follow up with these people too. But going forward this year, I'm going to go to more conferences that has outside of the black, race, just so I can get exposed to different people. So I'm going to make an effort to go to some of those this year too. But conferences, you definitely go to conferences because there's people there that want to help you, network. But don't make it about you, I. Just show what you can do. People can help you, follow up. But you always got to be a mutual, because there's people I talk to, I met at conferences, I'm still connected to with years later. So
I mean, that's interesting, because essentially what you're saying is networking is key.
Networking is key. If you without a network, because even when I have, and you know this, and I ain't capping.
Nah, I know.
So I have got jobs without having to do interviews, or meaning like they have to talk to you, but they already know they're gonna hire you.
Right.
Same thing with you. Like, there's been times and you know now to build your network up better, but there's been times where you got a job, you needed a job, and I was able to help you. And I'm not saying in a bad way, but the network is how I'm able to do that to the right people.
Right.
You ain't got to mess up my name.
Nah, of course. You definitely got to vet people. That's absolutely important. So, I mean, basically, and I agree with you, Chris, because there's a lot of people who are obviously moving to or migrating to the DMV area. When you think about it, like DC is a transit city, right? So a lot of people that have been living in this area haven't lived here for a very long time, and a lot of them are career professionals, right? Sir. And people trying to get into tech. You made a valid point. Get into these events, network. If you network with the right people, as you said, the right people, and you vet them, there's a high possibility that you can get into tech or get into the field that you've been desiring or pursuing. But I do want you to talk about how can somebody, or what do you recommend somebody do in order for them to get into GovTech or to also become an RMS specialist such as yourself?
Yeah, so GovTech is is any cybersecurity field in the government space. It could be state or federal. I'm going to mainly talk about the federal because I know that better. So in the federal level, you need clearances to work in the federal space. So you need a job to sponsor you. The type of clearances you can get a public trust, secret, top secret SCI, full scope poly, and then it goes to Yankee White and all these other clearances. But you need to get a clearance to even get in the government space. And to get a clearance, from me being a background investigator, you have to have a clean financial record, meaning if you have debts, pay it down. You have to pay on your student loans. You got to be a citizen or naturalized citizen, and you got to make sure you're not an adversary to the United States government.
Right.
So you have to pass all that before you can first even get into the field. Secondly, you got to find a job that can sponsor you. So there's a lot of when you get into the government, you can apply to a lot of jobs like in cyber to sponsor you. But 9 times out of 10, it's not going to go like that because they want somebody that's more that's experience. Well, you can be experienced and apply. They might pick you up. It can be harder.
Yeah.
So what I did to get in the field, I took a lower job, not a lower job. I'm sorry. Background investigator is not a low job. It's a very important job.
Low paying job,
like either a background investigator. You can get a
security officer.
Security officer. I know Intercom in the DC area is hiring all the time for clearances. I know your brother got one through there.
Right, and my brother actually did go through there, yep.
Yeah, Intercom. Or you can go to White Hawk Security. They hire a lot of people. Or you can just be a janitor.
Right.
But once you get the clearance, it opens opportunities because there's jobs. Say if you want to get 6 figures. You can get 6 figures in 2 to 3 years in the government space. If you did that in the private sector, you really have to know your stuff to get a role. Sometimes the people some people will, in the government space, will give you opportunities based off of clearances.
Sure.
But in the private sector, you got to really know your stuff to a T to even touch 6 figures.
Right.
And work harder.
Right. So you basically, if you're doing private sector, you better know what you're doing.
You have to know what
everything
you're doing.
that you put on your resume, you better know that that's what you can do.
Because they're going to highly vet you harder than it is in the government.
And the workload, you would say, is a lot more in the private sector as well.
Yeah, so some in the private sector, sometimes people, I've been hearing so many people working late hours, sometimes weekends. It's a lot more work, in that space, and they expect that from you. Sometimes you can get hit up from your CISO. You need to do this. You need to do that. I haven't worked in the private sector. This is from talking to other people, but it's a little bit harder. But you have more freedom to, if you wanted to job stack, you can in the private sector. In the government space, you really can't do it as much. And if you do, you got to kind of talk to your people, because I've done it. But I had to talk. You have to be really good at your job to even do that.
Right.
And yeah, so.
Yeah, I'm about to say, you got to be an elite RMS specialist such as yourself
thank you.
in order for you to do something like that. So, yeah, I definitely agree. So, yeah, I agree with you, man. So when it comes to being an RMS specialist, right, is there 3 things that you can share with people to be the best RMS specialist that they can be?
Yeah, so the first thing with becoming to be the best. Oh, I forgot to say how to become an RMS specialist.
Okay, let's start there. So how do you become an RMS specialist? Or what would you recommend for somebody to become an RMS specialist? And after becoming one, what would be the 3 best things or 3 things that they would need to do in order for them to be the best RMS specialist possible? So
to become an RMS specialist, first you need to, in the federal government space, you're going to have to at least have a secret or a top secret.
Okay.
Through a sponsorship.
Okay.
It can be through the government or not the government. You can be a federal worker or a contractor. The second thing you need to do to become a RMS specialist, ISO, whatever you can call it, you need to understand what the risk. They go off the NIST guidelines. Study because whatever you're doing in EMAS is going off the NIST guidelines.
Sure.
And whatever position, and for you to argue with certain people, you have to use the NIST guidelines. And I've done that in my job. Like, you have to go off that, and if you're going off that, you're going against the foundation that they set. So you have to know the NIST guidelines. You have to understand what vulnerabilities are. You need to understand what FISMA is. You need to understand what plan of action and milestones are. You need to know, even you got to know some of the basic networking. And going forward, the cloud is becoming popular in the government. You got to know the cloud. So if you can learn all that stuff, put on your resume, because people say it's a non-technical position, but you're going to have to argue certain things in a technical way for people to understand. In the government,
correct,
you have to know certain terminologies. You can say one terminology, and they will throw everything off.
Right.
I'm trying to look for an example. I don't have it on the time, but you can say one thing, and you can say mitigate, or you can say mitigate. Say, hey, I'm trying to mitigate a risk, but really you're trying to remediate. So if you say mitigate, they're going to throw everybody off because they understand certain things in the government. Right. And just make sure you understand the term. You need a security plus. And if you have all those skills, and then you just got to practice interviewing. I've checked out the Tech Woke Podcast YouTube channel. We actually did an interview with of how an ISO interview would go. Or go to a consult with somebody. If you need to consult with me on that. But consult with somebody on how to prepare for that. I think you can do it on your own with the information, but if you need help, do that. But that's everything you're probably going to need to become an ISO. To be great at the position, you're going to have to be a dog. You're going to have to be able to work without somebody telling you what to do. Because even as we work, I don't tell you what to do. Right. You know what to do. Right. If you don't do it, they're going to look at you crazy. Right. You got to have good people skills. You're going to know how to be able to talk. For example, as you see, being a podcaster has got me better to talk to people. Right. Going to networking events, be able to talk to people, be able to understand where people are coming from. So you're going to have to do that. You're going to be a good people person, and you got to be good at organization. Because you're going through emails, you got to know who to prioritize, who to talk to. And you got to be good organization because you got to make sure your poems and certain things are put in place. You got to make sure all those in place to be good at what you do. And lastly, you gotta learn how to navigate. I think that's pretty much it to be a good.
I mean, you said basically 3 things, right? So, right. You basically have to be an independent thinker. You have to learn how to thrive on your own, right? You got to know how to figure things out. One thing that I love about being in tech is you're a problem solver, right? We try to get ahead of the problem. right? Another thing that you said is you have to be a people person, right? You need to know how to speak to people. You need to know how to conversate with people. You can't allow your emotions to basically get in the way. That's why emotional intelligence is vastly important in any career that you're in, but in particular, especially in, the GovTech space. So just being an RMS specialist, like, that's important. And then also organization, right?
Yeah.
As you said, like, getting into it, like, we got to be organized. We have to know what we're doing in the day-to-day tasks.
And even with that, like, even at the job now, we're putting in things in place to make sure the program is better organized.
Yeah.
So, and I know you take full control on that type of stuff. So we're figuring that out now.
That's it, man.
Yeah, and then again, you're gonna have to be a dog. If you really want to get in this field, you want to make six figures, you got to be a dog. And I'm just telling you that if you're going to be on my team. Yeah, I only bring the dogs. I bring the best of the best.
He brought the dog.
Yeah, so you gotta be a dog in this field.
Ain't no Pomeranians.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta be a dog, and that's in general. If you want to get into cybersecurity, you gotta be a dog because I've met people that get searched, get in, and they get fired.
Yeah.
Or be told to say it's better for you to leave or fire you. Right. I've seen that. Yeah, I've never been in that situation. Thank the Lord. But, so you got to help people to help you.
Right, man, and that's so important, man. Like, I think a lot of people get in, and the one thing that they're looking at is the money, right? So they got dollar signs on their eyes.
That's why I got in.
The moment they get in. And again, that's good, but in order for you to keep them checks coming in, like you said, you got to be a dog. Mm-hmm.
And then also, too, like, I got in because of the money. I say after that 6 months, I was like, I'm just about to leave the field in general. You have to, and we talk about this, you got to get a love for your program at that point. You got to be in love with making sure your program's secure, and that's what gets you to the six figures. If you want to get to six figures, you got to be good at what you do. Your life has to be dedicated to this thing. So if you're not willing to do that, it's not for you. If you do it for the money, you're not going to last long, or you're not going to be good at your job, or you're going to get kicked. Your team going to start talking about you and get you kicked out.
Right.
And I've seen it happen. I haven't did it, but I've seen it happen.
Right. I mean, I love what you said, man, because you got to be in love with it. You can't just love it.
Yeah.
You got to be in love. I think about Kobe in that press conference when they asked him, they said, how do you feel after being up 2-0? He said, job ain't done. Is the job done? Is it finished?
That's a good one.
Yeah, and that's the mindset. Like, we have to keep grinding. It's not done. Yeah, man. So that's a valid point, man. Chris, I definitely think, man, like, you hit it on the nose today. We learned so much about you as a cybersecurity professional, as an RMS specialist, man. Like, you gave me a lot of insight, and I basically talk to you every day. We work together, you know what I mean? So, man, I definitely want to thank you for this conversation, man, and allowing me to basically interview you. But I do want to ask you, man, like, so what are your goals for the next 5 years?
Yeah, so my goal for the next 5 years is I want to grow this YouTube channel to at least 10,000 subscribers by the end of actually, I'm sorry. I want to grow the podcast on YouTube to at least 100,000 subscribers within the next 5 years. I want to help 100,000 people get into cybersecurity at some point. I want to eventually do some live podcasts, which I'm working on now. So keep that in mind, y'all. We'll do some live podcasts and probably do some speaking stuff in the future, create some courses, things like that in the future. But the main goal, I just want to help as many people as I can, because the reason why I'm doing this podcast, so everybody would know, it's not for the money. I probably make more money in my career. You know what I'm saying? To be very honest with you. But I do this because there's people every day. It could be high school. It could be a 40-year-old that's just trying to transition to cyber. I'm trying to help that person. I'm trying to help you. So I want to keep helping you, and I want to help as many people as I can. Well, I still have the energy. I got energy now. I don't know after 5 years, I don't know if I'm still at this energy, but I want to help you. So please keep checking out the podcast, because I'm going to keep doing it. And I'm going to make sure I'm going to give you that real authentic game, because I'm not a fake person.
I love to hear that, man. You're a man of the people.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you're not doing it for the money. You're doing it because you really genuinely want to help people, man. And that's how you always been. Like I said, you've always been a genuine person, man. And that's awesome to hear. Very awesome. So if y'all enjoyed this conversation that we had on the Tech Woke podcast, make sure to like this video and subscribe, and also comment below if there's anything that you want to share. In addition to that, man, like if you want to get updates in regards to cybersecurity or anything that Tech Woke has coming up, make sure to subscribe to the Tech Woke newsletter. Also, in addition to that, if you want to be a part of the Tech Woke community, make sure to join our Patreon. And lastly, man, if you want to get some merch, make sure to get some Tech Woke merch, man. Hey, man.
You did it good. You did it good, bro.
That's dope. That's dope, man. Can I shout out my brand? Hey, if you're a Christian out there, you like fashion, you like streetwear, make sure you get yourself a Be Holy hoodie. Check out my site at beholy.co. I repeat, beholy.co. Hey, man, you got to find a quote for the people?
Hey, remember everybody, get 1% better every day. Peace out. I'll see you on the next one.